going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. Now that the fifth Father of the Bride movie is out on HBO Max, and I've reviewed all the other movies in this franchise, it's time to rank all 5 Father of the Bride movies from, well, good to very good, because despite my shock that we somehow have 5 of these movies, I actually don't dislike any of these. I actually gave all of them 7 or 7.5 out of 10. So there's a surprising amount of consistency to this, and it's nice to see. And honestly, the margins between some of them are so small that I can easily see a lot of them being rearranged in their order on this list. But anyway, before we begin, let me know in the comments what your ranking of the Father of the Bride movies are. As always, this is just my list and not a definitive ranking. Also, make sure to hit that thumbs up button if you like these videos, as it helps me out immensely by getting my content out there. And if you're new here, I hope you consider hitting that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with more movie-related content like ranking videos on a near daily basis. But let's not waste any more time, and let's jump into the list. At number 5, our most recent entry, Father of the Bride 2022, which gives the story a much-needed modern update. While it still loosely follows the formula of our protagonist's daughter getting married and he goes through some stress in the lead up to the wedding, with him getting a little pushback from everyone else on the way he's going about things, this actually places much more of an emphasis on the whole family dynamic rather than having things strictly be about what the father's thinking. The film leans into the shifts in the generational divide, with our main character, played by Andy Garcia, having to come to terms with his daughter and future son-in-law not wanting a traditional wedding, or even wanting to live this life confined to social norms, which he can't quite wrap his head around, as he always believed in this work hard, non-stop way of thinking. And unlike all the other movies in this franchise, with this being more of an ensemble piece, there are more than just 1 or 2 big standouts in the cast. Andy Garcia is solid in the main role, but there's also a lot of added conflicts, with a number of the family members getting their own mini arcs in some way that makes a lot of them stand out to a degree, and in those ways, it feels refreshing and certainly makes this worth the watch. Now it gets last place simply because it's probably the least funniest of all these movies, and there are several added plot points that you can see coming from a mile away that could have been done a little better. And while those don't always make it the smoothest ride, there's still a lot of heart and charm to this that's still made for an enjoyable time. Number 4, Father's Little Dividend, the sequel to the original 1950 film that brings back all the same cast and crew as that one, and mostly follows a very similar formula to it, just swapping out a wedding with the birth of a baby instead. Now, because it feels a bit copy and paste, this does lead to some moments where conflict's created for the sake of conflict. Like here you have Spencer Tracy once again having some issue with his new son-in-law, when part of the whole first movie's point was how he comes around to both him and his daughter's marriage. But despite that, I still think for the most part, everyone makes it work. Like the first movie, it's very sweet, mostly easygoing, there's a great dynamic among all the cast, and there's this very naturally heartwarming feel to it that I think is hard to resist. And while similar to the first movie, a lot of this is Spencer Tracy's show, as it's all told through his point of view, Elizabeth Taylor as his daughter gets some really compelling moments of her own here that I quite enjoyed, as we see how she can't stand everyone else trying to make all these decisions about her baby without even asking her, which I thought was a much needed perspective to add, and it made for some really nice bonding moments between her and Tracy. Now, some of the humor and dialogue can feel a bit on the dated side here and there, so I don't think you'll particularly care for this if you don't like films from this time period to begin with, but if you do, and you also enjoyed the first movie, you'll more than likely enjoy this as well. Number 3, Father of the Bride Part 2, the sequel to the first Steve Martin movie, and arguably the most cartoonish and slapstick-based of all these films, with more of an emphasis on over-the-top deliveries and situational-based humor. And while this sees the franchise at its goofiest, it still actually proves to be a really fun time. With the main cast and crew from the first movie all returning for this, it retains a lot of that same heart and charm, and you once again just enjoy following these characters, even if they're placed in situations that might feel a bit more out there. And this will make up for the fact that it can feel like it goes in one too many different directions at times, with storylines about 2 different pregnancies, both expected at the same time, a storyline about trying to recapture one's youth, this plot point about selling the old house and having to move out of it within 10 days, having to learn to move on with your life, and just so much more. It's actually surprising how this didn't crumble under its own weight. But the charms of the cast and the heartwarming screenplay by Charles Shire and Nancy Meyers makes it all flow much better than it probably should have. Plus, there are plenty of laugh-out-loud moments to go around. Similar to its predecessor, Steve Martin carries this as George, mixing in comedic cynicism and a sense of heart. And Martin Short, as our breakout character from the first movie, Frank, also provided a lot of great laughs, stealing the show anytime he was on screen, even if it felt he was shoehorned in a little more this time around. While it's arguably the most out there of all these movies, it still proved to be a nice enough time that I thoroughly enjoyed. Number 2, Father of the Bride, 1950, and I will say between this and my number 1 film, I thought it was a close pick to which one I liked more, as it's really not by much. But the oldest film on this list that also went on to be a Best Picture nominee is very sweet and laid back, offering a nice look at a father trying to do what's best for his daughter's happiness while also trying to hold his sanity together. The film does a great job at extracting humorous moments from Spencer Tracy Stanley, showing that he's a ticking time bomb trying to hold it all together, but also in this impressively grounded way. It's made up more of amusing little bits and misunderstandings that come at a frequent enough pace, rather than having all these major laugh-out-loud moments. But they were still a lot of fun, and its frequent use of narration can sometimes make things feel a bit too schmaltzy, but for the most part, it can still feel very sweet and sincere. Spencer Tracy shines as Stanley, mixing this sense of warmth as well as some great comedic timing in his misguided efforts trying to plan the wedding his way. And while the rest of the characters aren't quite as developed as him, the supporting cast all do a fine job as well. In particular, Elizabeth Taylor as his daughter. Like its sequel, it can sometimes feel a bit on the dated side, so I think ultimately your enjoyment of this will come down to if you even care for movies from this time period to begin with. But in the end, it's still a nice, easygoing film with enough of a charm that it can still put a smile on your face. But in first place, just oh so slightly, is Father of the Bride 1991, the first Steve Martin movie, which might just utilize the same structure as the original, and it has a bit more of a cartoonish sense of humor than the original, but I still had a blast with it. Similar to how Spencer Tracy essentially carries both the original movie and its sequel, this is mostly Steve Martin's show, with George Banks having the best of intentions, and we do see the genuine bond he has with the rest of his family, in particular his daughter. Though while Tracy Stanley did express at times how he truly felt, it maybe just wasn't quite as often there. Martin's George, on the other hand, is a lot more open when it comes to expressing his frustrations and concerns. And while it does generate some extra conflict, it does lead to a few really solid laugh-out-loud moments. And this film also benefits from the addition of Frank the Wedding Coordinator, played by Martin Short, who provides just as many, if not more, of the big laugh-out-loud moments, swooping right in each time and taking command of the scene every time we see him, with his exaggerated, sometimes unintelligible delivery. Now, on one hand, as I just said, it does tend to drudge up some extra conflict for the sake of a scene or two that I don't think quite worked, and some of the more cartoonish humor doesn't always land. But on the other hand, I actually do think it hit the nail on the head very nicely regarding its more sentimental moments, and despite a few humorous bits not working, I think this winds up being the hands-down funniest of all these movies. So that balances things out, making this not just a worthy remake, but my number 1 favorite of the Father of the Bride movies. But let me know, what's your ranking of the Father of the Bride movies? Did you agree with this list at all? Did you disagree with it? Let me know in the comments below so we can discuss. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it. And for more movie reviews and film discussion, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated. Thanks for watching, everyone, and keep having fun with film.